So long-time viewers of the channel will know that I'm a big fan of Jo Bird. Now, she was the Green Party's parliamentary candidate, the prospective parliamentary candidate in Birkenhead at the last election, and she massively increased the Green vote share in that constituency. Unfortunately, it was too solid Labour to be able to overturn that, but she did pretty well for somebody who essentially was running off a pretty small base of support in that particular constituency, because she's a councillor, she's got support there, but not across the constituency as a member of the Green Party specifically. She used to have pretty big support amongst the Labour Party, but unfortunately, she was expelled from the Labour Party, not for actually doing anything wrong, but she spoke at a meeting for Labour Against the Witch Hunt 2 years before the group was proscribed by the Labour Party, and therefore was retroactively removed from the party for something that she had done before the group was proscribed. So she was essentially just purged. She was part of the purge of the trots, as Labour HQ called it, for essentially being slightly more left-wing than Tony Blair. So she's not allowed in the party, so she joined the Greens and ran against Labour, won as a councillor and did pretty well in the parliamentary elections. Now, one thing about Jo Bird is that she's Jewish, which shouldn't really be a big story. Shouldn't be a big story for there to be a Jewish person in this country who runs for political office. But apparently, it's all that is relevant about her character because, of course, the auspices of Labour's Trotskyist purge, as they called it, or just democratic socialist purge of 2020 until present day, is about the response to the EHRC report on anti-Semitism within the Labour Party and people's discussion of that. And of course, people who supported Jeremy Corbyn, people who agreed with him that the scale of anti-Semitism within the party was overstated for political reasons, which we essentially now know is true because of the revelations from Anushka Asthana's book on the subject that was published in The Observer in part, which showed that these specifically were over-exaggerated by figures inside the party by leaking it to the press. She was one of the casualties as such, for essentially being a Jewish person who was critical of the state of Israel. And so, having joined the Green Party, she has been pretty prominent in dealing with issues of anti-Semitism and has recently given a talk amongst Jewish Greens on spotting and dealing with anti-Semitism within a political party. Now, who has got wind of this? Oh, well, the JLM. The JLM have gotten wind of this. And so, ironically, in a uncharacteristic act of objective journalism, this has been reported on by the Jewish Chronicle, and I think it's worth reading as some of the claims made by JLM are absolutely wild. So the title goes, "Councillor who joked about due process gave Green Party anti-Semitism training." A row has erupted between the Green Party and Jewish Labour movement. Now, it's both explaining that she just made a joke about the fact that due process and due process sound similar as a Jewish person, and saying that that is kind of somehow evidence of anti-Semitism is like saying that a black person is racist for using the N-word and reclaiming it. It's a ridiculous claim to make about someone who is quite literally Jewish. So let's just forget about that and move on, shall we? Jo Bird, who is Jewish, was expelled from Labour in 2021 for supporting Labour Against the Witch Hunt, which had been prescribed by the party. Again, the specific thing that got her removed was speaking at them, but she spoke before they were prescribed. Okay, really important to understand that. She had previously been investigated by Labour for reacting to the publication of the EHRC report into anti-Semitism in the party by claiming racism against Jewish communities was deemed more worthy of resources than other ethnic minorities. And we know that this is true because the hierarchy of racism was demonstrated in the Ford report. I know most people in our press refuse to comment on the Ford report, but we know that within the complaints area of the Labour Party, that they were treated as more important and resources were more put towards these specific claims, and this led to the hierarchy of racism as demonstrated by Martin Ford in his report. So you can't really complain or disagree with what she said here. The JC has previously reported that Bird has stated that she believes there is a privileging of racism against Jews as more worthy of resources than other forms of racism, and joking that the way Labour dealt with complaints of anti-Semitism should be labelled due process rather than due process. A JLM spokesperson told Jewish News, "The idea that the Greens would use someone who was expelled from the Labour Party for anti-Semitism training shows that what deep denial they are about left anti-Semitism crisis in their party." Now, this is a very, very sneaky phrase where they're not trying to say that she herself was anti-Semitic, which of course would be ridiculous to claim about a Jewish person, but essentially trying to link any amount of left-wing politics with anti-Semitism, just like the broader press tried to do about Corbyn and the Corbyn Project and Momentum and people like that within the Labour Party. Very sneaky tactic to say that she's expelled from the Labour Party and then using her for anti-Semitism training, but you're trying to suggest that she could be anti-Semitic without outright stating it. But of course it's ridiculous to state that somebody who was expelled from the Labour Party, again, for speaking at a prescribed group before that they were prescribed and saying that somehow is about the denial about left anti-Semitism within the Green Party is ridiculous when you're trying to do that over a Jewish woman giving a talk about anti-Semitism. A crazy claim to make. The JLM statement prompted a furious response from the Greens' deputy leader, Zach Polanski, who is also Jewish. In a post on social media, he wrote, "Why would the Jewish Labour Movement, a group standing alongside government enabling genocide, comment on training within the Green Party? Who do they think they are?" The absolute incoherency of it aside, there's a much darker edge to this. It's about hounding out a Jewish woman for being a socialist and not matching their politics. It's vile behaviour and it should be treated with nothing but absolute contempt. Solidarity with Joe Bird. I couldn't absolutely agree more with Zach Polanski here. I'm so glad to have him as the deputy leader of our party. He is absolutely clear about the principles that he adheres to, in that you can be Jewish, you can be proudly Jewish, yet criticise the actions of the Israeli government. Absolutely right for him to do so, and I'm glad to have him in the party. They make out like Jo is some kind of rabid trot or something, but she's probably one of the most sensible people I've ever come across on the left. They were scared of her because she's well-spoken and has credentials. Well, that's the case, right? That's the reality of what's happening here, is that they are smearing Joe Bird and trying to tar the Greens with the anti-Semitism brush, just like they did with the pro-Corbyn faction in the Labour Party, because they're scared. That's it. If they thought that the Green Party wasn't a force to be reckoned with that was worth smearing, they would ignore us. But they know that our polling increased from around 2% in 2019 to almost 7% at the last election, and we're regularly polling between 8 and 10% at the moment, as people continually become disillusioned with how right-wing the Labour Party has become, having the purge of different members of the party since 2020. They are scared of losing support to us, so they want to treat us like persona non grata by applying the same smear tactics that they did to gain control of the Labour Party by smearing Jeremy Corbyn. JLM sources responded, rather than snipe and make excuses for cranks who were kicked out of Labour, the Green Party should stop doubling down and try and learn from us. Again, really kind of hypocritical for JLM to try and accuse anybody else of sniping, when that's literally what they're trying to do to Joe Bird, again, who literally is a fucking Jew herself, to try and smear her with the anti-Semitism brush. And saying that anyone should have anything to learn from JLM is quite frankly ridiculous at this point. And just, again, smear anyone you dislike as being a crank and try and use that to sideline them politically. Again, because it's all about vibes, it's about being the adults in the room. It's not actually about policy or the positions that they hold. It's about trying to electorally sideline the left. The source said that JLM had been at the forefront of getting the Labour Party to take anti-Semitism seriously and get it in a state fit to govern. A Green Party spokesperson defended the decision to allow Bird to carry out anti-Semitism training, saying, "The training was developed in collaboration with our Jewish Green group and shows that the Green Party takes anti-Semitism incredibly seriously, as they well should, as they absolutely well should." And again, all of this smearing of just anybody to the left as being an anti-Semite makes it harder to actually be able to root out any genuine anti-Semitism, because people who aren't anti-Semitic get tarred with the brush by osmosis, right? It is weaponization in the worst kind that really undermines the fight against anti-Semitism. They added, as a prominent and experienced Jewish councillor, Joe Bird is considered by the Association of Green Councillors as ideal to deliver such training. We have complete confidence in Jewish Greens and those Jewish councillors who developed and delivered this training programme at our conference. The spokesperson also said that the party stood fully behind Deputy Leader Zach Polanski. By interfering with internal Green Party matters, the Jewish Labour movement is playing politics which has not served the Jewish community well. The Green Party agrees that the Labour government is complicit in genocide in Gaza and has called for the suspension of all arms exports to Israel, they said, and absolutely right to say so. They are absolutely right to claim that they are playing politics, again, which does not serve the Jewish community at all. Absolutely 100% correct. To try and create a dichotomy within Jewish people about who is acceptable and who is not, based upon their stance on Israel, very specifically. And that is the worst kind of weaponization. Now, Zach Polanski himself has further hit out since this article was published. This is a group who say that we should learn from them. I see a group that have not criticised Luke Akehurst, despite him being as a non-Jewish person trying to police mine and others' Judaism. They've not even criticised their government who are actively arming a genocide. And they're a group that support a party that have dealt with racism in appalling ways. I don't believe any party, including the Greens, have got it right, but I wouldn't dream for a second of starting an attack on another party or attacking Jewish councillors. Look at the Labour Party's record and how they treated Diane Abbott, the Islamophobia reported directly by Zara Sultana, or the many Jewish people they've expelled from the party. What are the Jewish Labour movement trying to achieve here? It's certainly not helping Jews. And quite frankly, based absolutely correct from Zach Polanski to fire this broadside back at JLM after their smear tactics. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.